I think the other room's running a little bit over time, but we'll get started and then we might have some more join us throughout. So I'm a bit biased here as an employee of Superhero, but I am very, very excited for our next session. So in 2018, Wayne Baskin, who's our speaker today, and his co-founder John Winters founded Superhero, which was a fintech, and the platform launched in September 2020. And the mission of Superhero being to make investing accessible, affordable and understandable for all Australians, whether you're buying your first stock or whether you're an experienced trader. But for Wayne, this wasn't the first time in building a platform. Wayne's also spent the past 13 years as CTO and Deputy CEO of Booktopia. And he built that platform from the ground up. And so he's now translated that customer obsession and building those great customer experiences into the world of fintech from e-commerce. So getting half an hour with Wayne from my own personal experience is very difficult to do. So I'm very excited that he's able to be here for the next half an hour. And the guys convinced me in about 15 minutes to join Superhero. So I'm sure after half an hour, you will have all downloaded the Superhero app and signed up. It only takes a few minutes by the time you finish morning tea. So moderating this fireside chat, we have Stephanie Palmadarian from Smart Company. So I'll hand you over to them. Thanks, guys.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. I don't know about all of you, but this is my first in-person event in a really, really long time. So it's really nice to see like actual people looking at me. But it's also a little bit weird. But thank you so much for being here. I know we're running a little bit over time, and I don't want to cut too much into everyone's morning tea. So I think we'll just get cracking. I think we just got a really great introduction to Wayne, actually. But I was hoping to ask you to expand on that a little bit. Like, can you tell us a bit more about your sort of personal journey and kind of in a nutshell how you went from being Booktopia's first dev 13 years ago to now, well, where you are today?
Yeah, thanks. And I think Rach did a great interview. She probably should be sitting in this chair here. But 2008, joined Booktopia as their first engineer, built all the systems there, and really went, as I was building in a startup, the great thing about a startup is that you can grow in the startup. And that's naturally what happened to me. So about 3 or 4 years in, I brought on my first other devs with me and started building a team, and then started building that team underneath me until I was then given the title of CTO, and then a few years ago, Deputy CEO. But my Booktopia, for those that don't know, Australia's largest online bookstore, recently listed in December. We had a great IPO journey, went through the journey twice. I've got a lot of war stories about that. But the thing for me is we were a technology-enabled business that happened to sell books. That's how we started out. We then became a technology-enabled logistics company that happened to sell books. And now we're really a book company, who has technology at the core. And what that's allowed me to do is to be that deputy CEO. I run strategy, operations, all customer experience at Booktopia. And from that, I've learned everything that, I've brought now into Superhero.
And we'll come on to talk a little bit about Superhero in a second. But first of all, can you give us a sense of sort of how the kind of e-commerce and retail space has changed over the past 13 years?
Yeah, 13 years, I could tell you how it's changed over the past 12 months. It's been significant. The past 12 months, we've all been through COVID, and it's been an interesting journey. We're seeing numbers that are 100% up year on year through COVID, and then that's continued to grow. And it's the same in the trading app space, and it's the same in everything online as people are at home and looking for things to do. E-commerce, it used to be a thing. We used to ship our books when I first started in 10 to 14 days, and that was acceptable apparently. Now, if people aren't getting that instant gratification, if people aren't getting their products immediately, it's not good enough. And it's everything. Payments is now a big thing. We just saw the last talk by PayPal, and payments has become a big thing in e-commerce. You need to offer the right payments in e-commerce. Previously, it used to be give us your credit card number. We used to take checks. We used to take direct deposit, fax transfers, all these strange things. Now, I wouldn't even bother with any of that stuff. So everything is instant. Everything needs to be fast, and everything needs to be perfect. Otherwise, people are going to, go elsewhere.
And there's kind of that kind of intersection of e-commerce and retail and fintech now, which is a nice segue into Superhero. Wayne told me just before we started that he's now working essentially 2 full-time jobs heading up 2 technology companies, which I just think is a superhuman effort, superhero effort. Can you give us the sort of 30-second elevator pitch? Like, what is Superhero?
So Superhero is it's a trading platform, an investment platform that allows you currently to invest in the ASX. We do $5 trades, free on ETFs. John, my co-founder, and I, we thought of the idea 3 years ago, and the original idea was to allow people to invest their superannuation in the ASX without needing a self-managed super fund. And we built that, and one of the lessons I've learned is things in fintech and regulation are a lot slower than they are in e-commerce. In e-commerce you can build something, you can sell something, you can have a product out there pretty quickly. And in the fintech space and in the finance world, things move a little slower. And it took us about 2.5 years to go through all the regulation for the superannuation product. And in that time, we built an amazing. John said to me, "We just need to build an MVP." And I looked at him when we went live 6 months ago, and I said, "This is one of the best MVPs I've ever built." So we built a fully fledged trading platform with all the superannuation limits around it. And so we're in around March. The pandemic hit. APRA said we're not approving any more retail super funds right now. So we looked at our platform. We said we've actually built a really good trading platform here. How about we launch as a trading platform, and then when we can launch the super platform, we do that. And that's what we did. So it took us about 3 months to enable deposits, because on superannuation you obviously don't have deposits. It's all rollovers. It's all funds coming in. Removing a lot of some of the limits that are in place for superannuation. And in around September, we launched a trading platform which allows you to invest in everything that's listed on the ASX, ETFs, LICs, for $5, which blew our nearest competitors out the water. But the key for us, and Rach said it before, it's that transparency, it's the accessibility, and it's doing it in a way that has not been done before. So, if you look at our menus, you'd look and say, well, that's a bit Netflix-ish. We've looked at the great UX that's out there. We've looked at what customers want. Customers want instant deposits. We've enabled, using Split as our partner, instant deposits into your account. You get your personalized pay ID, you get a personalized BSBN account number. You deposit it in, and an SMS will come from Superhero immediately saying, your funds are transferred, you can now trade. So that's what Super is today. That's more than an elevator pitch, or we're probably going to the 50th level of that building. But we will be launching the Super product very soon. It is in beta at the moment. It is live. We have all the regulators. We're dealing with ASIC, APRA, ATO, which is a lot of fun. And that will be live very, very soon. And that is going to allow you to invest in the same way your superannuation without needing a self-managed super fund.
Awesome. So on the face of it, like Booktopia and Superhero are sort of completely, businesses working in completely different spaces. Can you give us a sense of sort of what your experience at Booktopia has kind of lent you in terms of expertise for the new venture, and kind of where's the intersection? Is it all about kind of that customer experience?
Yeah, I think you've nailed it at the end there with the customer experience. It's both of them are servicing customers, and so my thing at Booktopia is customer obsession. The customer is at the center of every decision I've made through my e-commerce journey, and it's the same at Superhero. We don't do things at Booktopia. It's not. We don't look at profit first. We don't look at our EBITDA first. We don't look at any. We say, what does the customer want? When we moved to our new distribution center at Booktopia, we looked where's going to be best for our customer. Where are they going to get the fastest shipment? And so that is what I've brought across to Superhero. And I think my lack of knowledge in finance, my lack of knowledge of markets, my lack of knowledge is what's actually allowed Superhero to be what it is today. John, my co-founder, he used to be a stockbroker, used to be everything that that we don't want Superhero to be. But we used to say, the long ponytail driving the Porsche, and then we said, well, John just didn't have a long ponytail. But it was the interesting thing for me is they would say to me, this is the way it's done. That's how it is. And I'm like, well, why? Let's just take an example of corporate actions. Corporate actions in the trading floors. It's like they've got teams at Shaw's. They've got teams at some of our competitors dealing with corporate actions. I'm like, well, we've got the data. Why can't we automate it? Why can't we do this? And everyone looks around and goes, because you can't. I'm like, well, why? And so that questioning for me is really what's allowed Superhero to do what we do. People say, how do you do $5? Well, the technology allows us to do it. The technology allows us to rip out a lot of those costs that traditional brokers are still doing, a lot of that manual work that they're still doing. But it's that customer obsession. It's looking at what does the customer want, and how do we want to interact with the customer? What's the best user experience? How do you build trust with the customer? It's all the same. It all translates, whether it's e-commerce, whether it's trading, and whether it's your superannuation.
And how do you make sure that you do know what the customer wants? Like, how does the feedback loop work?
So the feedback loop's interesting. It's at Booktopia, I'm very fortunate to have the budgets there to be able to run what we call A/B tests, which is you serve up two different versions of a website to different people at the same time, and you see which one converts better. So, do we put the trust icons up here, or do we put them down here? Do we show this form here, or do we use 7 fields or 3 fields? Or do we hide the fields or not? So a lot of that is just test, and all data driven. And at Superhero, while we're getting there, we're just not at that point yet. It's asking the customer. It's going out there and speaking to your members. It's speaking to your customers. It's surveying them. It's buying them a coffee, at a coffee shop and saying, would you mind? I'll buy you your coffee, but will you give me 5 minutes of your time just to look at this and give me your feedback? So it's using that, those user experience, learnings that I have in e-commerce, bringing them across, but then testing them and saying, do they work? Do they translate into a finance world and into a trading world?
And then if your customers come back and say like, oh, we really want this product or we'd really like this functionality, like how do you figure out what to prioritize?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So the Reddit army, love to tell us what they want. And we listen. You have to listen. It's not, we're there, we're on Facebook, we're answering our customers. The old way used to be let your customers complain and just ignore them because you don't want to engage on social. That was 5 years ago. It was, God forbid we have a conversation about something that went wrong on our platform, and now it's the total opposite. It's let's engage, let's turn that detractor into someone who wants to promote the platform, but also let's ask them what they want. And sometimes what people tell you they want and what they want are two different things. You'll say to people, would you pay more for shipping if it was faster? And everyone's like, yeah. But then you increase the cost of shipping and make it faster, and everyone still goes for the cheaper option. It's like, so what people say and so you've really got to dig in to say, why is that a problem? What are you actually trying to solve? Is it that you really want that feature, or is it something else that is the problem? And so it's a hard one. And then priorities, in the fintech world, there's regulation is this new thing to me. Obviously in e-commerce, there's payment gateways, and you've got to be well regulated on your payment gateways. But everything else, it's like just treat the customer right. You've got all the laws about returns and whatnot. But here, there's regulation, and regulation needs to be our number one priority. So sometimes the customer may be screaming for something, but regulation either doesn't allow it, or we've got other tickets and other tasks that need to be done from a regulatory perspective. So it's a constant juggling act. Again, that transparency comes to my staff, to my team. Rachel will attest that every fortnight we have a meeting where I speak about what our roadmap is, what our current focuses are, where we're at, what we're looking at, so that the team know things are progressing. And it's the same going out to our customers and telling them what's been launched, what the new features are, and so that they know they're being listened to.
It's interesting that you mentioned the sort of transparency within the team. Like, obviously, culture is something that we hear so much about in startups, and kind of the importance of culture. And like, we hear about companies that get it wrong and companies that get it right. And it's increasingly becoming very clear that it's about more than sort of ping pong tables and free beer and things like that. So I guess like how have you structured that team with such a new business that's kind of pioneering, and how do you make sure that the culture is there and right, and what's worked and what hasn't worked?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think at Booktopia, culture wasn't a thing 13 years ago. It wasn't this big, ping pong tables and T-shirts and hoodies and things like that. It just wasn't there. And I think I've learned from that, and what I've come into here is a totally different world. And for me, it was a bit of a, an eye opener to say, well, we're going to spend money on totally different things that we did at Booktopia when we didn't have the budget. But I totally agree with you. It's not about T-shirts, and it's not about ping pong tables and free beer. They definitely help, and people do enjoy that. I think for us, it comes to the hiring process. And the very first interview you'll have at Superhero is a 15-minute interview with myself or John, and that's a cultural interview. We don't want to know about your background. We don't want to know about your, how good your tech is and where you've been. That's all been done through your resume, and you've got that far. But it's about, will you fit into our culture? And we've had some really good people and really talented people who just wouldn't fit the culture. And someone who can come into your business and not fit the culture can actually ruin the culture of the whole team. And you say, it's one bad egg, but it actually, no matter how good they are, sometimes you've got to say, no, the culture comes first. And that's what we've done at Superhero. So You know, you got to make sure that the team love what they're doing. They want to be involved in what they're doing. You know, from an early startup, giving people options in a business helps that a lot. So everyone's invested, everyone's working to a common goal. You know, they don't come to work going, we're going to work to make John and Wayne's dream a reality and to make them super wealthy. You know, it's like, no, I've got a share in this. I'm going to take up myself on the journey. But let's say t-shirts help. Why? Because people are promoting the brand. They want to wear the brand. If they love the brand, you'll see that very quickly. So, you know, I was a bit against, why do we need hoodies, t-shirts, bags, you know, all the stuff. But, you know, us Rach, they love it. They can't get enough, and we have to lock the cupboard because people just love raiding that room.
Yeah, and I guess if they kind of have a personal like financial stake in the company, then like they want to promote it because that will promote the company, and that will like ultimately improve their wealth and improve their like work life, and it's self-perpetuating.
Yeah, correct.
So you've talked a little bit about sort of some of the things that you've learned along the way, kind of about the regulatory environment and things like that, and you know, some of the lessons that have come from growing Booktopia. I guess if you could go back in time, either 2 years or 2.5 years to the beginning of Superhero, or way back 13 years to the beginning of Booktopia, is there anything that you would tell the Wayne of the past? Anything you know now that you'd wish you'd known then?
I'll tell you a funny one for you and a not a funny one for me, and I'll tell you a proper one after that. So 2005, we were listing Booktopia. We didn't get it away that time, which was probably a good thing because we got it away more recently. And a young entrepreneur came to me, and I was mentoring him on his online jewelry site, and explaining to him, you know, I just would go for coffees with him, and I'd mentor him, and I was on his advisory board for his jewelry website. And he came to me with this idea, and he said, Wayne, I want you to found this idea with me. I've got a co-founder. I want the three of us to found this thing, and you know, it's this thing where you can pay after, and you know, you pay after, and that was the pitch. And he's a good mate of mine, and it evolved into this 4 payment thing. Yeah, well, I think we've all got there, haven't we? It's Afterpay. So I think what that taught, and so yeah, I had the option of being a founder at Afterpay if I didn't spell it out there. But I think what I learned from that was, you know, I was very risk averse. I was like, you know, Nick, I've got this Booktopia, we're listing. I've just got to go through this journey. Once you guys grow a little, I'll join you then. And you know, they pitched me for the next 4 years, and I still didn't go. Like, you know, what an idiot. But I think what I learned from that is you've got to be risk averse in some of these things, and you've got to take some risks. So as I said, funny for you, not for me. The second one, and probably more for you guys, is people, and how important hiring people ahead of time is. It's not when you've got this backlog of work that you need to do that you all of a sudden go, let's go hire, because what happens is those people that are busy need to hire the people, and then everyone's too busy to hire, so then you don't hire people. But then you get into a hole, and then it just perpetuates. So hire early, build your team early. At Superhero, in the last 6 months, I think we're around 30 to 40 people already, and we hired in most of our teams early, except our tech. And I think our tech team, and finding good tech people right now is extremely hard. They're either very engaged elsewhere, or I don't know, they're unicorns and they don't exist. But you know, hire early, get those people on board. Don't worry about those salaries up front, because it's an investment in the future. That's probably my key one.
And if you are a startup that doesn't have like a ton of capital, like how do you compensate those early employees? Like, is it a case of giving them options?
Yeah, I think options work, but I think today, you know, in this day and age, you know, things cost money. You know, people need to pay rent. People are trying to save up for a house. Who knows where they're going to live? But you know, people are going to trying to save up. So yes, you can give options, but it's not the way of Silicon Valley years ago, where they would literally just pay in options. You know, so you've still got to have got to give people a decent salary with options. But funding's the hardest thing. Finding good funding. We've just been through a round at Superhero, and you know, it was relatively easy. Good product, and we had people that knew us and were backing us as people. I don't have an answer for that. You've got to get people that are willing to come on board for the options and live the journey. You do need to pay them, but you've got to live within your means as well, because you don't want to bankrupt the company before you've even started. So.
Yeah. It's a fine balance, it sounds like. So I realise we're supposedly on the cusp of morning break, so I'm just going to open it up to questions if anyone has anything they want to ask Wayne?
Thank you. Hey, Wayne. Lockie from Open Insurance. I was previously at Spaceship, so I was very keen to hear this today. Keen to know about the experience of trying to set up the super fund. I know from experience how difficult that can be, getting licenses, all that. What's that been like for you guys, and how have you overcome some of the hurdles that you've experienced?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. Look, setting up a super fund or setting up anything financial is a lot more difficult, as I said, than e-commerce. And we learned that, when John and I started this, we had this ambition to launch Superhero in the super within 6 months. 2.5 years later, we were still talking to regulators. We're still talking to APRA, to ASIC, trustees, investment administrators, member administrators. So we've embraced the regulation. Really, we have. We've had those discussions early with APRA. We've had those discussions early with ASIC, with the ATO and whatnot. It doesn't mean it goes any quicker. It just means that they're engaged and they understand, and that when you want to launch, it's not like, hey, by the way, we're Superhero. You never heard of us before, but we want to launch. I wouldn't say I've enjoyed the experience. I'm happy it's done, but I think what it means, and I've always said this, and it's for anything. Just don't take it for this, but if something's hard to do, that's a good thing if you can get through it, because it sets up a barrier for others. And if it was easy to do, everyone else would be doing it already. Yeah. So for me, that I always look at a challenge and I go, well, let's smash this out, because if we can do it, then we're going to be successful here. If it was just easy to just set up a super fund, you'd have super funds everywhere. And the regulation's a good thing. It protects people who don't know, who may not be as wise to what they're doing with their money. So I think it's important that it's there. I wouldn't say I've enjoyed it, but I'm happy that we're through it.
To follow on from that, like, it's obviously a very kind of complex area that you're in, and there's a lot of regulation, a lot of hoops to jump through, and like it's not kind of a simple product. How do you make sure that the user experience is simple when you're kind of dealing with so much like complexity behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It's make things very complicated behind the scenes and complex behind the scenes, so it's simple for the user. And it's always been my mantra with anything I've built. Like, people will look and go, that is a super complex system, and I'm like, yes, but it makes the user experience really easy. I think the thing for me, though, more around the user experience, which I'm learning, is that I hate pop-ups. I hate anything that's going to stop the conversion on e-commerce. Conversion is everything. But I think there are some necessary evils in the finance world. There's some necessary warnings you need to give to people. There's some necessary pop-ups you need to give to people. There's some checkboxes you need to have. I've challenged them. We've got a very strong compliance team at Superhero. It's something John and I decided very early on, Nick being a good friend of mine and Larry from Zip being a good friend of his. And they learned that. They went through the whole buy now, pay later, and they really didn't make compliance, while they have all the compliance in place, they didn't have a very strong team from the outset. It wasn't that strong. And for us, it was one of our first big hires, was our head of compliance. So, we have our great discussions, I would say, myself and our head of compliance, about, compliance people always want pop-ups, bells, everything going, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And I'm like, convert. So, there's the happy, intermediary. But, from the very beginning, John said to me, Wayne, I want confetti. I want confetti when someone places a trade. And I said, you can't gamify this. This is people's money. I was right, he was wrong. I know we've all seen the news lately. But I think for us, it's having that hat on to say, I'm not in an e-commerce world. I'm not in a game here. I'm not building an app that's a toy. I'm building a finance product, but I want to still make it easy. And it's finding that balance, which is difficult, but I hopefully think we've overcome.
Yeah, well, another one of those things that's difficult to find the balance, but worth doing, because when you do it, it works. Any more questions? Sarah, Mike.
Yeah, I've got the microphone, so I'm in front.
Oh, sorry.
Observation comment, Tim from Novarti Payments. While you've been talking, I signed up, deposited and bought some stock, so it's amazing. So
I'll just talk through that process very quickly. So you signed up. So you've gone through a full AML, identity verification,
Correct.
through that point. You've
Yeah.
then deposited your funds, and this is not an advert, I'm just trying to show the complexity in the background.
Yeah.
You've deposited funds, the SMSs come in, you've bought stock all on
Correct.
the market. Now, should we go into other markets
Yeah.
in the future, you'll have that same experience of instant funding in other markets as well.
Impressive. So we have a relationship with Split as well. Moving forward, are you going to connect to other settlement exchanges outside the ASX, such as crypto or anyone else like that?
Look, I won't talk to the crypto one right now, but I will talk to US is something we're looking at. And we're looking to break those barriers. What we've done is we've listened to the feedback of our competitors. You know, we've looked at what feedback our competitors are getting, and we've seen how can we give a differentiated product. If we can't give a differentiated product, I'm not interested in going there. I'm not just trying to be, doing what other people are doing. Should we go to other markets like the US, it'll be fully integrated. You'll see all your securities in the same, in the same screen, very clearly labeled as Australia and US or other markets we go to. As I said, you'll have instant funding into other markets. You won't have to wait 3 to 4 days, and it will be free. It'll be free funding through the Split as well. We're not going to charge you a fee for express deposits or anything like that. So we're trying to be different. So it's taking its time. We're not, if we wanted to just roll out a white labeled crypto product, or if we wanted to roll out a white labeled US product, we could have done that a long time ago. But the answer is yes, but we're taking our time to do it right.
G'day, Andrew Braun from NetWealth. How are you? I'm interested how you're going to balance the trading with the super. One's a short-term investing versus one's, medium to long-term investing, and potentially you've got a younger audience doing the trading, maybe not. I'm interested how you're going to make that balance.
Yeah, so we've got an older millennial as our customer. I'm a millennial still, believe it or not. So we do have, the late 30s is probably more of our customer. So it's not that young millennial or whatever they're starting to be called now, who is our main customer. We promote long-term investing now through the free ETF buying. It was something we consciously did. We took some feedback from one Scott Pape, who said to us, "How are you promoting long-term investing?" And we looked at each other and said, "Well, let's make it free to buy ETFs." It costs you $5 to sell, but because we don't want people day trading ETFs, because if we made it free on both sides, you would have people day trading ETFs, which could be very dangerous for people. So we've done that consciously. There will be limits on what you can invest in through the super. It'll be ASX 300 and about 150 ETFs. So by that nature, we're not going to allow the penny stocks and any of that day trading to happen. And then there's limits again, because it's a retail super fund, there are limits in place as to how much you can put in a single security as well. We also force a level of diversification. We force a 25% of your account balance needs to go into a managed ETF, into an ETF, which is we call our managed portfolio. It's not really managed by us, it's just an ETF that's listed. So all of these things are forcing that level of diversification, ensuring people can, educating people on the benefits of long-term investing, and trying to get people into the right product for their needs.
Any more questions? Do I have time? Yeah.
Sure, just do it.
We're just doing it.
Hey Wayne, I don't know if this is super left of centre, but I was going to ask anyway. If you had a magic wand or you could freeze time, and so basically with like businesses, high growth, you're just growing, new markets, expansion, it's like just scale, evolve. If you could freeze time, wave a magic wand, had infinite money resourcing, change one thing about the platform, the app, your business in general, or even nothing to do with money or resourcing, even yourself, what would you do?
Yeah, it's not left of field, because I often say to John, my co-founder, when can we freeze time? Like it's a comment I make. I would just get through that roadmap. We've got such a long roadmap. We've got other platforms we want to, other markets we want to get into. The app, while we rolled it out, the story about our app is quite an interesting one. We were building a super product, and in a super product, you don't really want people every day checking their balance and trading every day. So I said to John, we don't really need an app. We just need a mobile site, a mobile. And all of a sudden we built a trading platform, and then the very first piece of feedback came, which was, "So when is the app coming?" And I was like, "Oh man, we need an app. so we very quickly built the app. So we modeled the app on exactly, what the mobile side is, because it was built for mobile first. So the problem with that is, we just haven't had the time to innovate in the app. With so much functionality, we hear about it all the time. When will you have this? When will you have that? And it's all on our roadmap. We just need the resource and time. So I wouldn't change the business. I wouldn't do anything different. I would just freeze time. I would really give myself the time to build my roadmap out, to build everything I want. And then we'd all be sitting here again, and you'd all open your app, and it'd be a totally different experience with all different markets and your superannuation product, and everything would be hunky-dory. So that's where I'd be at.
I think we'll wrap it up there and head to morning tea. Thank you so much, Wayne. It was great actually hearing it from you over a longer period of time, and I'm one of those very lucky few that have the beta of the super product, and I can tell you it's pretty amazing. So yeah, thank you so much, and we'll head out to morning tea now and see you in half an hour.